Are you a
Good afternoon. I've got 1:30. Let's get started. We've got a few members that are tied up in committee, and I've got a couple of members, too, that need to, if you don't mind, if it pleases the committee, take some out of order and get the senator and Chairman Klaus to another committee. So, Ms. Harper, if you'll call the roll.
Representative Reynolds.
Here.
Representative Blackshear. Representative Hall. Here. Representative Bracy. Representative Easterwood.
Here.
Representative Givens. Here. Representative Lamb.
Here.
Representative Lee. Representative McCampbell. Representative Mooney. Representative Sorrells.
Here.
Representative Sales. Representative Underwood.
Here.
Representative Warren. Here. Representative Witt. You have 8. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Harper. And go ahead and call the first bill out of order.
Senate Bill 84, filing fees not required for certain qualified domestic relations orders.
Senator Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill is basically in a divorce situation. Couples have retirement plans or things of that nature, and it allows the transfer of those or distribution of that to the other party. And sometimes it comes back and this gives the time that they don't have to file another filing fee for the judge to amend the order. So really you're just helping people. It may have 5 times a year, but some judges who brought it to us ask us to consider this because it's really not fair to the parties to have to pay a filing fee when usually the carrier, whether it's Vanguard or somebody, just needs something amended in the quadro, which is what it's called, and it just keeps the families from having to pay another filing fee. That's all it is.
Okay, any question by the members? Do you have a motion?
Make a motion.
You got a motion? Second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? SB 84 receives a favorable report.
Thank y'all.
Thanks, sir. Next bill, Ms. Harper.
HB 201, RSA procedure established for funding benefit increases of ERS and TRS retirees.
Chairman Klaus.
Oh, thank
Coming a regular
Mr.
opportunity
Chairman
here.
and
Glad
members
to
of
have
the
you back.
committee. It's 2 weeks in a row. Maybe we start making a habit of this. So, but House Bill 201, dealing with trying to figure out a way to fund cost of living raises for state employees and education employees. We've got Mr. Norris Green here, who's was former head of the fiscal office and sort of the architect of this bill, and Lindsay Ward and Leanne Kelly with the retired state employees. If y'all pepper me with any questions, I can't answer. But basically, it's something I've been thinking about for a while, because we haven't been able to give any type of cost of living raises for state employees and education employees, because, and I know Representative Hall and Representative Warren were with me back in 3, 4, 5, and 6. I believe it was over a 4-year period. We gave out 15% cost of living raises over a 4-year period that weren't funded. Things were going good, so it didn't make everything was fine, and then the bottom dropped out in 08 and 09, and we were in a mess, and the RSA went from 102% unfunded liability to down in the mid-50s somewhere. Luckily, we've edged back up into the upper 60s range. But this bill just basically sets up a system where we would have to, if we gave a cost of living raise every year, it'd have to be appropriated inside the budget. So if we did get into a situation with the economy where it fell off a cliff, we as a legislature could make a decision not to fund that raise in that particular year. So if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Any questions by the members? Mr. Brooke?
What percentage of this is retired teachers?
What percentage of it?
Is it a high percentage of the participants that are coming from the education side?
Well, on the education side would probably be, and I don't know the figures there. Maybe Dustin or Kurt might know that, or Norris. Yeah.
Well, my question is, for the education side, shouldn't this come out of the education budget instead of the general fund?
No, it would come out of the, right, it would come out of the education budget.
Okay.
On the education side.
Okay.
Right, absolutely.
Any other questions? Yeah, and again, this is just an infrastructure bill. Really, this is nothing new. I think Mauricio has been working on this for 2 or 3 years,
Right.
and a lot of good work gone into it. So with that, I'll entertain a motion.
There's a sub.
Ms. Warren?
I just want to say thank you. This is something that we've been dealing with our constituents for years and years, and trying to explain to them that there's nothing in place that guarantees them these cost of living raises. So I just want to say thank you. As a retiree, I'm going to have to step out the voting, but I wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, you want to go ahead and introduce the sub?
Well, this is the sub here, so would I have to vote on the sub first if someone?
Entertain a motion for the sub? Motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Oppose? Okay, the sub is on the table. Any other questions by the members? Have a motion, second. All in favor, say aye. Oppose? HB 201 receives a favorable report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, sir.
Committee.
Thank you for your work. Appreciate you. Next bill, Ms. Harper.
House Bill 1, Representative Pettis, Alabama State Law Enforcement Agency, Department of Public Safety salary adjustments provided to certain law enforcement officers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, members. Basically, what this does, it puts the Alabama law enforcement all arresting off, well, the substitute does. The original bill had troopers only, and there's a substitute in your package. It puts all arresting officers under LEA, under the pay raise bill. You want to do the sub first, or you want me to do this? Or?
Yeah, we'll first adopt the sub.
Okay.
You have a motion? Have a motion, second?
Second.
Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Oppose? Okay, we now have the sub on the table.
Okay, what the sub does, it does pass the original bill. It added LEA, all arresting officers. It did SBI, it did the pilots, and it did the the LEA chief. They're not considered troopers, so we amended the bill to make sure all arresting officers were included. Also, in the substitute, it says these are the minimum pay scales that are in the bill. That way we don't have to come back to legislators later on if state personnel wants to raise them. It just sets the minimum pay scale for each rank of ALEA.
And members and to the sponsor, I did find out today that personnel just received the sub this morning. We gave them a copy of it, and Aaliyah had not seen the final sub. So if it pleases the committee, I'll ask that we carry this over to call the chair, and we will vote on it next week.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Pettis. All right. I'll retain the chair of the committee that matter. My vice chair, I think, is tied up working some important matters. So our next bill is HB 138, which is an appropriation bill to fund Alabama State Small Business Credit Initiative. It's a federal program reauthorized by the American Rescue Plan Act. And this is an appropriation bill, but this is a fix. This is adding adequate language required by the federal government to distribute the funds that are allocated here at $97 million. A motion, second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? HB 138 receives a favorable report. Ms. Harper?
House Bill 105 by Representative Lee, transient occupancy tax, lodging tax, further exemptions for certain registered vehicles.
Representative Lee.
That's on this.
No. No, my bill, no, sir. That's okay. Yep, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if many of you have been down to the coast and seen the cabins that are actually on lots where they lease those cabins, and a lot of them are long-term. And this is a new business model that's happened in the state of Alabama, particularly in Dothan and that area there. And so what we found that because it was a new business model, because it was a new business model, there was really no standard of how to charge them. They were getting charged for their taxes on the lot, on the mobile home. They were calling it a mobile home, and then they were having to buy a sticker for a trailer, like trailers do in camping. So what this does, and then there's an amendment here, this eliminates if it's over 90 days today. And so we're going to keep it at 90 days. I've got an amendment to change it. I changed it to 60, but because we changed the language on page 4 where it says continuously occupying any slip, then it fixes our problem. Because we have the nuclear plant down there and different large businesses, and they come in and they'll work for anywhere from 4 to 5, 6 months. And so it's not transit. So what we're doing now is just eliminating that charge for that cabin. So that is what the bill does today. And since we put the continuous occupying any slip language in there, now I can go back to the 90-day period rather than the 60 that's in this bill. So I do have amendment for this one.
So moved. Second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Okay, the 105 is amended, and we're back on the bill.
That's the bill.
All right, we have a motion? Second. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Bill receives a favorable report, Chairman.
Thank you.
House Bill 73 by Pettis, real property tax assessment.
Thank y'all again. Basically, in Alabama, there is no limit on increasing the property tax of real property. This bill would put a property cap on real property tax assessments under certain conditions. There's a few states around us is where we come up with this bill. I've got the most complaints from this bill than anything I have since I've been in. Property tax everybody's is just going sky high. I'm going to give you a few examples. Arizona has theirs capped at 5% per year. Arkansas is at 5% per year. California's is at 2% a year. Colorado's, they cannot raise the residential property tax. Theirs is 45% of whatever the value is. If the value is at $100,000, they drop the value down 45%. Florida has a 3% cap. Georgia has a 10% cap. Illinois has a 5%. Iowa has a 3%. Maryland has a 10%. Michigan's 5%. New Mexico is 3% or 6% over 2 years. New York is a 2%. Oklahoma has a 3%. Oregon has a 3%. California, South Carolina's is 15% over 5 years, which would be a 3% per year. Texas cannot raise no more than 10. Like I said, Alabama, you can raise it at any limit. Over the last 10 years, Alabama is averaged between 5 and 8%. The last 2 years is when the dramatic increase has gone in. Currently, low-income families are hurting because the growth going on around them is causing their tax bill to increase. Families are hurting with their mortgage payments to increase from $1,000 they had budgeted $1,200 for. Retirees on a fixed income are hurting because the growth going on around the house that they've lived in for 30 years, they cannot afford their tax bill. I got a letter from my mortgage this past week. Said your escrow is $350. I think it's $350, $345 short. Said, how do you want to pay it? All because my income tax went up. My taxes went up last year 40%. I had several people in my counties went up over 100% in 1 year. And according to my tax assessor, the same thing's going to happen again this year in my county. Everybody keeps telling me that, oh, you're costing money. Not taking money away from anybody. All this is doing is putting a cap on how much it can raise. It's not stopping you from raising it. It's just saying you can't raise it so much. And I think we have a public hearing, so.
We do, Representative. You want to go ahead and enter the sub, get the sub on the
Yes.
floor first?
Yes, we'll do this. I'd like to introduce, well, have a sub.
You want to explain the difference, what was changed?
The sub basically is just changing a little language in it. Let me see, let me find it. What it did, it basically said, in the original bill, it says significant improvement. What we did is said if you do maintenance or any kind of thing like that, the cap still would stay in. If you sell your property, like if somebody dies and your family gets it, it will freeze it with that. It don't raise it also. But if you sell your property to an individual, the cap does not kick in.
Very good. Do I have a motion on the sub? Motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, the sub is on the table, and we'll move into the public hearing now. And I would ask you to try to stay within about a 3-minute time frame. You go over just a little bit, that's okay, but we've got a lot of people signed up today, and there's a lot of conversations going on with this. There was, unfortunately, not a lot of work done on the front end of this, and so we're having to deal with it today. So we'll begin with Sonny Brassfield under the opponents, and I'll bounce back and forth between the opponents and the proponents.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I
Brassfield.
apologize. I signed on the wrong
That's all right, I
part
moved
on
you.
the line. I'm not paying attention this afternoon. House Bill 73 generates what I'll refer to today as an arbitrary cap in the assessed value of property at 3%. All the states that were mentioned earlier that have caps are states that we all know have property tax levies and assessments that far exceed the levies here in Alabama. It is not a cap on revenue. This bill is a cap on services. Local governments receive their funds to provide services, in many cases to the very industries that are supporting this bill. And by capping the revenue arbitrarily, you cap our ability to provide services. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Long term, what does this mean? In just a 3-year period, a $200,000 house that was going up 5% in value according to the formula and the process that the counties use, which is approved by the Department of Revenue, would go from $200,000 to $231,000. 3% cap would keep that value from only going to $218,000. And the difference in tax revenue is a reduction in revenue to provide services to those at the local level. Our property tax process is very sophisticated, Mr. Chairman. Every 4 years, every county's process is reviewed by the Department of Revenue, and is trued up, some of these big increases are a result of that fourth year true up. We've also had almost 17% inflation in the last 3 years. So we've had two things that have contributed to these big jumps: an inflationary period that's been very, very unusual, as well as the fourth year where the numbers are trued up. This process, because it's arbitrary, would without question generate litigation. I'll come back to that in just a second. Let me tell you real quickly what we do in terms of providing services. We run a workers' comp fund for 61 counties. In the last 3 years, the payroll for law enforcement alone in those 61 counties has gone up 24%. Every year you pass dozens of bills creating new crimes and increasing the penalties for existing crimes. All of those people go into the county jail. All of them are arrested at the local level, and we have to implement those. If there had been a 3% cap 3 years ago, there would have only been 9% in additional revenue to provide for that increase in cost. Where would the additional 15% come so that law enforcement could continue to protect the citizens? The question is, those services would have been reduced. Counties, believe it or not, will be the defendant if this bill passes and there's litigation. The county commission will be asked to defend these lawsuits. So if you move forward with this legislation, we'd ask you to do two things. One is change the bill so that the state of Alabama is responsible for defending the case, and the state of Alabama pays any lost damages from the state's portion of ad valorem taxes. And secondly, that you replace the revenue so that we do not have to cut services to the people at the local level. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Brasfield. Next, Ada Catherine Van White, Alabama Association of School Boards.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, and representative. I'm Ada Catherine Van Wyhe with the Alabama Association of School Boards, speaking in opposition to HB 73 as filed. In the state of Alabama, public education funding, the lion's share comes from the state at around 55 to 65%. Federal funding accounts for 10 to 14% of school funding, and local funds account for, on average, 21 to 35% of funds available for public education. Again, that's an average. Auburn City Schools, for example, their local revenue for their general fund budget is 45%. While we understand the intent of this legislation is to address increased costs due to inflation, this would have a direct detrimental impact on local revenue available for public education. For example, in Shelby County, if this bill were to go into effect, the impact that it would have on Shelby County's local revenue available for public education, almost $8 million. Again, we are opposed to this bill because of its impact on public education and the funds that are available to local education. These are funds that your schools and your school systems use for personnel, for school resource officers, for necessary improvements in their schools to their facilities. Those are those funds available for them to use to serve the communities and the students and the staff in your communities. We ask for your consideration of our opposition on this bill, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Next is Chad Scroggins, Shelby County.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm Chad Scroggins, the county manager in Shelby County. Just want to speak to you a little bit about what this bill would do as written right now. Our general fund relies heavily on the property values in our county. Counties build quality of life. That's what we do. We look at it in Shelby County that we have 4 pillars of quality life. Those 4 pillars being our public safety system, the educational system that we have, jobs and job growth, and then also recreational opportunities. When you hamper our ability to provide these services, you no longer build the value within the community. We're the ones that are assisting with building the value within the homes themselves. If we look at our general fund budget itself, capping this, if we did a true estimate or a true costing out of what it would happen from last year, if we applied this last year, it would have cost our county almost $16 million total. As you heard from the previous speaker, she said $8 million. Actually, when we did the calculation, it's actually closer to $9 million for just the education system. Again, hitting one of those quality of life pillars. For our our law enforcement, you're hitting our general fund. It would have been $1.7 million. This year alone, the cost for deputies, the increase for their pay raises is at $1.5 million. So we're already going backwards. Roads and bridges, we'd lost another $1 million. Here's the thing, in Shelby County, just this past 12 months, we instigated a project with AlDOT, and we put in $20 million to expand I-65. And I know that many of you travel I-65 to get here, and you run along pretty quickly until you get to Shelby County and you come to a complete stop. We're having to give the state funds to do a state highway project. And we're doing that out of funds that we've saved. If you cut us by $1.7 million, think about how long that takes to get to that $20 million number. Lastly, I'll say that you've got this program with the state does with SEEDS Act, and you're asking local governments to help prepare large sites so we can be competitive across the nation to recruit new businesses. Well, that SEEDS Act is a 50-50 match, 50 with the state and 50 local government. You're cutting our ability to be able to match those opportunities for economic development growth. Mental health and other services that were once provided by the state are being pushed down to local governments. As Sonny said earlier, this actually cuts our ability to provide services locally. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, Farrell Seymour, School Superintendent, Opelika City Schools. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am Farrell Seymour, Superintendent of Opelika City Schools, and it's my honor to be here today to share some concerns about this bill and opposition to it. Opelika City and our school system, we're growing. 10 years ago, we were at an enrollment of 4,200. Today, we sit at 5,200, and our newest projection totals for the next 10 years have us at 6,000 to 7,000 by 2034. We are funded well locally through our city at roughly 40% of our budgeted revenue, and it takes a lot of money to run quality schools and have opportunities for our kids. And how do we do that? We've recently renovated our high school over the last several years to the tune of $45 million. We built a new Fox Run Elementary School this past year and roadway improvement to access the school at $24 million. And this coming summer, we're going to renovate the middle school HVAC unit for $5.7 million, all of which local funds help with these endeavors. So quality schools, we feel, are essential for a growing community. It takes funds to do that, local funds to do that. This is what the families who move to our community expect and desire. And how does it look on a day-to-day level if it doesn't, if this bill does go into effect? Well, it could cost us about $2 million per year in estimation, which would be a great hit because we fund counselors out of that. We fund lead teachers, instructional coaches, and aides to support the classroom instruction. Custodians, special ed, additional special ed staff that we so desperately need. Many of our local teacher units, all of them, that help reduce class size and provide wonderful opportunities for our children would be taken away. System-wide electives, advanced placement courses, career technical programs, advancements in technology and all the technology equipment that we would use, or much of it, would be affected. Art programs, band, choir, music, all of it, theater, would be affected by this local funding taken away. Certainly athletics, classroom software, and teacher professional development opportunities. So as the gentleman previously mentioned, this would be a reduction or restriction of services for us as well, and it would affect greatly our opportunity to educate properly the children of Opelika. So, thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next up, Jeremy Walker, Realtors. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'll tell you the best part of this committee hearing was walking up here and signing up and seeing Sonny Brasfield signed up as a proponent. And we love being on the same side with the counties, and he's a tremendous advocate and does a great job. I'm Jeremy Walker, Executive Director of the Alabama Association of Realtors. We speak in favor of House Bill 73 for several reasons. I'll try not to belabor some of the points that have already been made. This has been an issue in different parts of the state for many years. In the Birmingham area, this has been going on for 5 and 10 years, and now it's become more acute across the state, from Mobile up to the Shoals and Florence. Property owners are seeing two things, particularly those who have a fixed rate. You may think if somebody's got a 3% mortgage, hey, they're in good shape. But as Representative Pettis indicated earlier, escrows are coming due right now. And so two things are driving things up. One is your annual property tax increases. The other are your insurance, homeowner insurance rates, which we're seeing huge increases on that, particularly at the coast. And then wind insurance is up across the board exponentially. So those two things are really driving up mortgage rates. And it does put a lot of pressure on your older homeowners, your retirees, people on a fixed income, and lower income homeowners. Placing an annual cap, we believe, is common sense, as other states have followed that. It allows for constant, stable growth of between 3% and 5% each year. The local government officials that have spoken, they're excellent people. They do an excellent job providing the best services they can with the resources provided, and we want to be sure they can continue to do that without allowing homeowners and property owners to get hit with exponential increases each year. The second process, we're very much aware that we live in a state that traditionally opposes property tax increases. And whenever we've seen a local property tax referendum, a lot of times they're not successful unless they are tied to a specific service being provided, like schools and so forth. It's understandable, but one of the things that we're seeing is a lot of aggressive activity with the way these property taxes are being assessed. It's almost an understanding of we can't get a property tax increase, but we can increase revenue if we're really aggressive on assessing the value of the property. And that's kind of something that our folks are seeing all across the board, and another reason. The last point we would make from an economic development standpoint, as you all are very much aware, we are in a war to attract business and to attract people moving to our state. Now, we've had a lot of success the past 3 or 4 years. We're seeing increases in net migration that we haven't seen in a generation, which is outstanding. But one of the consistent themes on people moving to the state that they're looking for is cost of living, high quality of life, and economic opportunity. We believe Alabama provides all three of those. But some of the states that are growing a little bit faster than us, particularly in our area that we're consistently competing with, are some of the states that have been mentioned that already have a very reasonable property tax cap. Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Texas. These are all states that when we speak with some of you about economic development, that we look at these states and say, hey, they're a model. They're somewhere we want to be like. And so they've already implemented this for good reason. Both people and businesses are looking for consistency in government, predictability, and stability. And we hope that a very reasonable cap of 3% and 5% respectively will provide that. Last point, I just want to reiterate some of the comments being made. This proposal doesn't take a dime from state or local government at all. And I think that's been lost in some of the comments. We keep hearing about lost revenue, lost revenue. There is no lost revenue. This is not looking backwards. This is looking forward prospectively. And we run a small association, but I will tell you from a budgetary standpoint, I don't count on money that's not there. And so it's almost like some of the budgeting has already been factored in for double-digit increases year and year after this. Last point, there's a point being made that this is a time-proven process and that we're in just a fluctuation. Unfortunately, not only inflation is driving property values higher, we have a supply and demand problem as well. We have too few homes out there on the market. We've got too many buyers, so that is just a supply and demand. If you don't have enough houses, the value of that is going to continue to go up. We think nationwide we have a couple $1 million housing inventory shortage, and it's not going to be solved anytime soon. We don't see there being a break on these property tax increases anytime soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeremy. Next, Kristen Herring, School Superintendent, Auburn City Schools. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the committee. I am Kristen Herring, and I'm in my 31st year as a public school educator in Auburn. I'm in my 5th year as superintendent, and I can tell you that I depend upon the local revenue generated in my committee to provide the services to the students in Auburn City Schools. Auburn is a thriving community, and a community that offers a set of services that attracts new people, many businesses, and a good bit of industry. They move to Auburn because of the quality of those services, from our city and our parks and recs to our public school and to our public safety. All of those services are expensive to operate. And while no, I have not budgeted for the increase over time, nor can I control the number of students who might choose to attend. I have never seen a successful business model that put a cap on the amount of revenue or income that could be collected but did not put a cap on the number of students that could be served or the needs of those students who might come. There is no way for us to control the expenses of a school system. There is no percentage cap on the potential of salaries that might change, diesel fuel that costs for buses, the expense of our services and electricity, or the purchased materials. Auburn City Schools is funded 45% in our general fund with local revenue. The people who have chosen to live in Auburn and the agreed upon millage rates know that the services and the quality that they receive costs that. I would want to say to you that we are known for exceptional instructional services. But if this had been passed 6 years ago, the most recent data I've studied, it would be an exact loss of $31 million to Auburn City Schools. That amount of money would have prevented our hiring 21 school nurses, 17 school resource officers, and 4 social workers. Not to mention the locally funded teacher units, the mental health counselors, and our assistant principals in each school. We provide high-quality professional development to all educators, extraordinary special education services to students who present special needs, and out of our general fund, we present the money for all of our debt services. I impress upon you the need to reconsider that many of the states that have a cap on property taxes also have other means of funding education. In Auburn City Schools, I'm dependent upon this as a means of revenue, and I ask for you to consider a different number or no number at all that allows us to respond to the needs of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Herring. Next, Russ Durrance, Alabama Farmers Federation.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I am Russ Durrance with the Alabama Farmers Federation here to speak in favor of House Bill 73. Our organization has long championed reasonable and affordable property taxes for farmers and landowners across the state of Alabama. Alabama's property tax system doesn't just benefit farmers, it makes our state attractive to businesses and families as well. The recent migration of people and companies from states with burdensome property taxes and crippling regulation is proof that Alabama is doing something correct. Recent trends in property tax assessments, however, threaten to undermine this system. With the statewide average increase in taxation from agriculture was 13% from 2021 to 2022. However, some counties saw increases as high as 42%. House Bill 73 attempts to rectify this situation by placing governors on the rate of property tax increases. This is particularly important to our farmer members as it would insulate vital property, including barns, fencing, and other improvements from rapidly increasing valuations. Timing is also crucial. Our farm economy faces substantial challenges with escalating input costs, depressed commodity prices, and high interest rates, creating a financial squeeze for our farmers across Alabama. According to the Census of Agriculture released earlier this month, Alabama lost about 8% of its farms. Higher production costs are a major driver of this decline. Since the last census, these costs were up almost 40%. Feed has increased 57%, with fertilizer, labor, and fuel each up more than 30% as well. Add annual property tax increases of 13 to 42% to this mix across our state, and it's easy to see why our farm numbers are continuing to decline. We believe House Bill 73 offers a tangible solution to alleviate some of the burdens that farmers face from continuing to run their operations. In our current agricultural landscape, every dollar saved holds an immense significance far beyond what it did just 5 years ago. By capping property tax valuation increases, we can ensure that farmers have more stability in their financial planning and can allocate resources more effective to their essential farm needs. This measure is a practical step towards supporting the backbone of our nation and its food supply. I urge you to consider the real-world impact of this legislation on the farming community in particular. It's about sustainability, resilience, and ensuring that our farms can continue to thrive for years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Next up, Baker Allen with the League of Municipalities.
Good afternoon.
Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Baker Allen, Director of Policy and Research for the Alabama League of Municipalities. The League is opposed to House Bill 73, which caps assessed values on Class 2 and Class 3 properties. For 36 out of 100 municipalities surveyed, over 10% of their budgets come from property taxes. Obviously, this will impact the general functions of local government. When you reduce that revenue, there's less funding to provide for schools, police and fire, infrastructure, including roads, sewers, and water, parks and recreation, and even state grant programs that require local matches to participate. But there are other major questions out there about the implications of this bill. Consider tax increment financing districts. Municipalities have areas where the incremental growth on the assessed value is put back into that specific area. Without that increase, municipalities cannot invest in those areas and turning them around, hopefully boosting the value of those properties. Additionally, often TIFs will have debt associated with them, which leads me to my next point. New bonds will show this as a negative. There will be concerns about the ability of one of the most reliable resources to secure debt. That means higher interest rates, which is ultimately passed on to the taxpayer. Another issue to consider are earmarks. Municipalities will often earmark certain parts of the property tax. One good example is hospitals. We have a community that reserves a specific amount of funding to go to that hospital. As the cost of healthcare rises and we cap the resources that go back towards that hospital, you can see this would create quite a problem when Alabama is already losing numerous hospitals. And finally, economic development. Municipalities often partner with the state to make economic development projects a reality. This is often in the form of abatements. When you recruit an industry into your area, the abatement goes away, but the value of the land around it goes up. This allows us to be able to finance and pull off these types of incentives. Those questions should be answered because the way we read it, this bill, it does away with those structures. Property values rise with inflation and community growth. Capping revenues means capping our ability to meet the expectations of our communities. Keeping the current property tax structure means keeping rates low that grow with the economy. HB 73 has serious consequences for what happens back in your communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Baker, could you do me a favor, if and then that's come up before, related to bond ratings for our cities. If you've got something in writing specifically about that, would you send to the committee members?
I'll put that together, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Next, Rosemary Elbash with NFIB.
Good afternoon, members of the
Welcome.
committee. Rosemary Elbash, I'm the State Director for NFIB. Excuse me, NFIB. I wanted to talk to you and tell you that we are in strong support of this legislation. And back in 2006, this issue really came to light, which is before any of you were here. That's when we went to actual annual appraisals. Before that, there were 4-year appraisals. So I put a question on the ballot about property appraisals, and I will tell you that 87% of NFIB members, small business owners, did not want an annual appraisal. They wanted a 4-year appraisal. So what this bill does, it gives you really a 4-year cap on this, is the way I look at it. And I'm glad someone brought up abatements. And let me talk about when we recruit industry to Alabama. We pay a lot for them to come here, a whole lot. Well, I will tell you, small business owners don't get those abatements. They are here every day, they're in your downtown, and they're providing tax revenue. 99.4% of businesses in Alabama are small business owners. And they're the ones that fund so many of these different programs. The other thing I want to talk about is COVID. As you remember, small business owners particularly were closed down during COVID. They are still recovering from that. Many of them did get PPP loans, but many had to borrow money to survive. They're beginning to pay those loans back. Couple that with inflation, couple that with the lack of qualified workers, all of that adds up to a bottom line. So what we're asking you to do is to give small business owners tax certainty. They know it's going to go up. They know it's probably going to get the cap every single year. but having tax certainty helps them budget for the rest of the year. This isn't the only thing they pay. They have lots of other fees and taxes that they're responsible for. So this would give them that tax certainty that they need. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary. Next up, Stephanie Smith, Alabama Policy Institute. Welcome, Stephanie.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, Committee. I'm Stephanie Smith. I'm the president of the Alabama Policy Institute. And this is one of our blueprint proposals for the state of Alabama this year. Currently, revenue commissioners have no option but to assess at appraised value. If you're curious what the statewide average increase, it's between 5 and 8%. But the changes that have come over the last several years, especially the last 4 years, have been significant in certain areas. The average increase statewide was 11%. In Baldwin County, it was 21%, which isn't surprising. That's a huge growth area. But also in different counties that you wouldn't think are a huge growth area had significant increases. Marengo County, 34%. Lowndes County, 68%. For Class 3, those percentages are significant as well. In Butler County, there was a 42% increase. In Etowah County, 24% increase. DeKalb County, 35% increase. We support this idea of having a tax assessment cap because the average increase is just above that. These astronomical increases aren't sustainable, and they really shouldn't be budgeted for. The only constitutional way to cap property tax increases is this way. Local revenue commissioners have no option but to assess at the appraised value, and no funding is being cut. This is creating a sustainable, budget-friendly way for municipalities and for the actual taxpayers, whether or not that be individuals with residents or small business owners or even large business owners, to be able to plan ahead for exactly what their property tax will be so that they can make wise decisions. And in closing, I just want to say it's compelling, obviously. I'm a resident of Shelby County, and so when I hear about a certain cut that might impact the county where API is located and where my family is located, you think about that. But I will also say that what we need to just foundationally remember is that every tax dollar comes from a taxpayer. There are no such things as state funds. They're only taxpayer funds. And so this creates a sustainable system where taxpayers can rely on what they will be expected to pay for those services. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And last on my list is Tom Saunders, AFA. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Nothing like being the last and a very interesting discussion that's going on today. I'm going to make my points briefly. I just have a few. First of all, the forest sector industry in Alabama, as you're well aware, is a $31 billion enterprise annually. I don't want to confuse the issue, but our underlying timberland assets are not really subject to this discussion because we have current use for that. However, of that $31 billion, a vast majority of that is directly tied to the forest manufacturing sector. We have manufacturing facilities in all 67 counties. We're growing this sector rapidly. Hundreds of millions of dollars a year in capital investment is being invested. And, just another factoid that you might be interested in, that for every tree we're cutting down, we're replacing it with 1.8 trees, which is really not helping the landowner that much, as my friend from Southwest Alabama over here would acknowledge. We have 36 years of standing timber based upon our current manufacturing capability. So it's inherent that we have a system that encourages capital investment and promotes this forest products industry. I would suggest that a vote against this bill, it would be a vote against setting a cap on the amount of appraisal that could go up on a yearly basis. But it's also a vote against business owners and homeowners in this state that are, there's really no check and balance that we have on these appraisals. So, and then to follow up on Jeremy's comment earlier, from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, it's kind of scary. If government, especially local governments, are doing their planning based upon revenue streams that they hope will come about, and I don't know about the bond aspects of it, but I would think that any bond agency is not grading the ability to issue a bond based upon prospective, unforeseen income coming in. So I just think from a fiscal responsibility standpoint that we ought to support this legislation. So thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Tom. Mr. Brooks, do you have a question?
Not to Tom. Is he the last one?
Yes, sir.
I just want to make some comments.
Okay, can I let the sponsor come back up and just make brief comments, if it'll please the committee?
All of you should have in your packet, this is the tax records from the last few years. Talking about Shelby County. Shelby County, in 2020, 2021, they raised their property tax 1.96%, well under the cap. 2021-22, they went up 11.5%. So if you look at the cap, it shows 2012, 2013, 1.86, 0.76, 3.23, 3.81, 3.89, 4.92, 8.21, 5.35, 5.58, and then the last year, 11.45. This is the problem. We're taxing our citizens. They have no way to plan for this. Overall, they can plan for, if you looked at this, pretty much every year, we're real close to the cap. Now, this is on Title II. Title III is also almost identical. Each year, the average, 0.15, 0.54, 1.71, 2.29, 3.1, 4.55, 5.35, 4.19, 6.21, 13.38% in 1 year. And my tax assessor says next year, this coming year, if we don't do this bill, everybody's taxes are going to be pretty close to the same percentage. So we say we have the lowest property tax in Alabama. If we keep raising our taxes 14, 15% every year, we will never be 50 again. And I'll open up for questions.
Thank you, Representative. Any questions for Representative Pettis? Representative Easterbrook?
I come from a financial background. I was CFO at the stainless steel mill at ThyssenKrupp, built the largest investment ever in the state of Alabama by far. When you're looking for a site to select, when it comes to taxes, you're looking at one thing, property tax. Sales and use tax doesn't matter to me because it's variable. Every time I sell one, I have to pay taxes on it. But whether I'm selling at 100% of capacity or 1% of capacity, property tax is fixed. If you want to see businesses decide not to locate here, start raising property taxes. They won't argue if you raise sales and use tax. But you raise that fixed cost that's the same regardless whether they're producing anything or not, that will open their eyes. And we talked about abatements. That's the largest abatement that was ever gave by the state. Took 2 years to pay $800 million back in the abatement. So they didn't lose anything. The first year they got a large portion of their money back. The year we actually opened, Mobile County School System was talking about having to lay teachers off. And we called them and told them, so you realize, and this was at Christmas time, that our bill, we're fixing to pay our tax bill, and this is the first time. They said, well, how much is it? $32 million. That ended the discussion of laying the teachers off. If you're in a growth area, you're growing because your businesses are growing, and you're bringing in new people and they're building new homes, you're getting more revenue than you ever had. For me to sit here and hear you say it's a reduction of revenue when it's a cap only, you're getting more revenue than you ever had. The growth in the people and the growth in the businesses also increasing your revenue. In Mobile County, I build houses. I've had a home building business for years. In the last 3 years, 4 years, I guess it was, we've gone from $110 a square foot to $226 a square foot. And that's what you get in your property taxes on. So it's hard for me to understand how you're not getting more revenue when the price is going through the roof. I own a bunch of rental houses I bought 5 years ago. I'm selling them now for 300% above what I paid for them. And the property taxes show it. What we're doing is driving the low-income people out of their houses, even low-middle-income people out of their houses, people on a fixed income out of their houses. We have huge insurance premiums that went up in Mobile and Baldwin County, and you have a lot of people that have lived on their property for years having to sell because they can't afford the two of them. So it's hard for me to see this as a reduction of revenue.
Thank you. Ms. Hall?
Representative Easterbrook, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Prior to coming into session, I had several calls. As a matter of fact, I talked to Ms. Ellen Batch, who is still here, about one just from the business perspective, but several calls relative to the increase in taxes. And they were not good, they were not happy calls. When people talked about the amount their taxes had increased for this year and the year before, and challenged me to come to Montgomery and do something about it. I had no idea Representative Pettis had this bill, but when he mentioned it to me, I said, sounds like you're on to something. The other part of my conversation is that businesses, I was also found out that businesses that own their property that they own, that they continue to pay each year on that, taxes on that. And that's another area I say we need to look at. So now, I'm not opposed to schools. I'm not opposed to any of the groups that have spoken, but based on the response that I've received from the constituents that I represent, I support your bills.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the committee? Well, I will say that, first of all, thank you to everyone that came to the public hearing and provided information. It's a very divided topic. I actually came here today set to make a recommendation to this committee that we put it into a subcommittee. I'd already talked to 3 of our smart members that understand this. But after hearing the testimony today, I think I don't want to create any barrier for these opponents to work directly with Representative Pettis, and I encourage you to do so, Representative, before we come back next week. And I think the answer is somewhere in between where we're at today and where we need to be. So I think the word compromise needs to be understood this week. And then, as we previously stated, no vote today, and it'll be carried over to next week.
Thank you. Thank you, members.
Representative Mooney.
Mr. Chairman, just a comment in general. It's not specific to this bill in any way or this issue in any way, but it is a tax comment in relation to having served 10 years in this body. And when I came in, I began to question how we had structured and come to the tax process we have in our state. I don't know that we've ever done anything to really study and understand why are the states around us doing things in the manner they're doing them. Obviously, from conversations and statements that have been made today, each state is different, each state is doing something in a different way. I don't know that we've ever had a comprehensive tax study done to try and analyze a comparison of the state of Alabama to the states that surround us that we compete with. I would hope that we would consider long-term understanding that, because I understand we have this bill now, so we obviously need people to meet, come to a compromise, and work something out. But long-term, it would seem we should enter into the process as good stewards to look at what is going on around us and why it's going on that way, what success they've had, what failures they've had, and learn from that process what we can do in our state to better supply our schools, better supply our local areas, our Shelby County that I'm in, our economy's rooftops, that type thing. But we're blindly approaching it if we don't study what's going on around us.
Thank you, Representative.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yes, sir, Representative Lee.
It looks like there needs to be a little consistency would be very important. I'm not going to name the counties. This goes back to 19, 20, 21, and 22. 3%, a negative 1%, 1.5%, 68%. I mean, that's not an issue with me. That's a problem. And then let's go to the next one. 0.16, 0.68, 1.1, 18%. The next one, 0.37, a negative 0.34, 3.7, 16.1. I mean, that's a budgeting problem for businesses. That's a budgeting problem for people at home. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. With one bill left, HB 220, and it was asked to be carried over by the bill sponsor. So we'll carry that over. Did that cover all of them, Ms. Harper? You got all of them? Last week, I introduced our new members, Donna Givens and Carrie Underwood, but you were all in other committees that day, so welcome. Appreciate you being here and look forward to working with you. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yeah. No, I didn't go that route. I said I was prepared to do that, and I'd already talked to some, but yes, sir. I just didn't want to, I don't want to create a barrier there. I want them to be able to work freely this week, okay? Yep, and motion to adjourn. So moved. Thank you.